Good morning, everyone. Good morning. It is Friday, and I want to say welcome to everyone who has come into the live. Those of you who are here already, those of you who will be here later on, and those of you who will be here even later on sometime after this, because this video will be on YouTube forever. So, whenever time it is that you come in to my channel and you listen to this video, a very special welcome to you. And I hope on that day you are having and you will have a fantastic day. Now, for those of you who don't know, this is straight from Trebescence, and today we are going to continue the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Now, we have been reading this book for a few days now, and as much as this book is intriguing and inspiring, I'm sure there are lots of people who probably have not gotten the gist of what this book is about. So, this is not going to be the only time I read this book. I'm going to be reading this book again and again. And we're also going to be using this book for a lot of reference because of the lessons that are written in this book. And reading this book, you can't just read it on the surface. You have to think deep about what this book is saying. Just calling the words is not good enough for a book like The Alchemist. So if you are an avid reader like I am, and you can find yourself with a book with a copy of this book, I suggest that you read it. And I think everybody should take a read of this book. This is one of those books that I would recommend to everybody, to my children, my family members, my friends, and strangers alike. I would recommend that everybody read this book. And after you're done reading this book, we can talk about it. Because right now it's just me talking. But I'm but I'm reading it to you all, with you all, for us all, so that we can get a better understanding of what The Alchemist is talking about. And in general, what I have sensed from this book is that everything in this world is connected. Even death. Life is connected with death and everything in between. No matter what it is. The book talks about your life's journey, your destiny, how to achieve your destiny, not to allow anybody to get into your way, because oftentimes the people who try to hinder others from reaching their destiny usually never reach theirs. So let no one stop you. Take up the mantle of your life and move forward with it, regardless of what's happening around you. Because at the end of the day, everything is connected, and life itself will conspire to ensure that you reach your destiny, no matter what it is. So I implore you today, on this Friday, the 24th of March of 2023, to take up the mantle of your life, decide what it is that you want to do. Have you longed to return to school? Have you longed to apply for that job? Have you longed for those children you wanted to have, or even that single child you want to have? Have you longed for something, just about anything, to travel somewhere, to work in a particular field? Whatever it is that you are longing to do it is not going to get you doing it. You have to get up and do it, and use the resources that you have right now to attempt to reach your destiny, because on your journey, life will conspire to provide you with everything else that you need to reach your destiny. But what you must do is start. All right, enough of my rambling for today, my friends. Welcome again. Thank you all so much for coming into the live. This is Trev from Trebescent. We are going to be continuing the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. The two were taken to a nearby military camp. A soldier shoved the boy and the alchemist into a tent where the chief was holding a meeting with his staff. These are the spies, said one of them. We are just travelers, the alchemist answers. You were seen at the enemy camp 3 days ago, and you were talking with one of the troops there. I'm just a man who wanders the desert and knows the stars, said the alchemist. I have no information about troops or about the movement of tribes. I was simply acting as a guide for my friend here. Who is your friend? The chief asked. An alchemist, said the alchemist. He understands the forces of nature and he wants to show you his extraordinary powers. The boy listened quietly and fearfully. What is the foreigner doing here? Asked another of the men. He was he has brought money to give to your tribe, said the alchemist, before the boy could say a word. And seizing the boy's bag, the alchemist gave the gold coins to the chief. The Arab accepted them without a word. There was enough there to buy a lot of weapons. What is an alchemist? He asked finally. It's a man who understands nature and the world. If he wanted to, he could destroy this camp just with the force of the wind. The man laughed. They were used to the ravages of war and knew that the wind could not deliver them a fatal blow. Yet each felt his heart beat a bit faster. They were men of the desert and they were fearful of sorcerers. I want to see him do it, said the chief. He needs 3 days, answered the alchemist. He is going to transform himself into the wind just to demonstrate his powers. If he can't do so, we humbly offer you our lives for the honor of your tribe. You can't offer me something that is already mine, the chief said, arrogantly. But he granted the travelers 3 days. The boy was shaking with fear, but the alchemist helped him out of the tent. Don't let them see that you are afraid, the alchemist said. They are brave men, and they despise cowards. But the boy couldn't speak. He was able to do so only after they had walked through the center of the camp. There was no need to imprison them. The Arabs simply confiscated their horses. So, once again, the world had demonstrated its many languages. The desert only moments ago had been endless and free, and now it was an impenetrable wall. You gave them everything I had, the boy said. Everything I've saved in my entire life. Well, what good would it be to you if you had been dead? The alchemist asked. Your money saved you for 3 days. It's not often that money saves a person's life. But the boy was too frightened to listen to words of wisdom. He had no idea how he was going to transform himself into the wind. He wasn't an alchemist. The alchemist asked one of the soldiers for some tea and poured some on the boy's wrist. A wave of relief washed over him, and the alchemist muttered some words that the boy didn't even understand. Don't give in to your fears, said the alchemist in a strangely gentle voice. If you do, you won't be able to talk to your heart. But I have no idea how to turn myself into the wind. If a person is living out his destiny, he knows everything he needs to know. There is only one thing that makes a dream impossible to achieve: the fear of failure. I'm not afraid of failing. It's just that I don't know how to turn myself into the wind. Well, you'll have to learn. Your life depends on it. But what if I can't? Then you'll die in the midst of trying to realize your destiny. That's a lot better than dying like millions of other people who never even knew what their destinies were. But don't worry, the alchemist continued. Usually, the threat of death makes people a lot more aware of their lives. VH, welcome. AG, welcome into the live, my friend. How are you doing? Happy Friday to you all. Thank you so much for coming. We are continuing the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. The first day passed. There was a major battle nearby, and a number of wounded were brought back to the camp. The dead soldiers were replaced by others, and life went on. Death doesn't change anything, the boy thought. You could have died later on, a soldier said to the body of one of his companions. You could have died after peace had been declared, but in any case, you were going to die. At the end of the day, the boy went looking for the alchemist who had taken his falcon out into the desert. I still have no idea how to turn myself into the wind, the boy repeated. Remember what I told you? The world is only the visible aspect of God, and that what alchemist does is to bring spiritual perfection into contact with the material plane. What are you doing? Feeding my falcon. If I'm not able to turn myself into the wind, we are going to die, the boy said. Why feed your falcon? You are the one who may die, the alchemist said. I already know how to turn myself into the wind. On the second day, the boy climbed to the top of a cliff near the camp. The sentinels allowed him to go. They had already heard about the sorcerer who could turn himself into the wind, and they didn't want to go near him. In any case, the desert was impassable. He spent the entire afternoon of the second day looking out over the desert and listening to his heart. The boy knew the desert sensed his fear. They both spoke the same language. Then on the third day, the chief met with his officers. He called the alchemist to a meeting and said, Let's go see the boy who turned himself into the wind. Let's, the alchemist answered. The boy took them to the cliff where he had been on the previous day. He told them all to be seated. It's going to take a while, the boy said. We are in no hurry, the chief answered. We are men of the desert. The boy looked out at the horizon. There were mountains in the distance, and there were dunes, rocks, and plants that insisted on living where survival seemed impossible. There was a desert that he had wandered for so many months. Despite all that time, he knew only a small part of it. Within that small part, he had found an Englishman, caravans, tribal wars, and an oasis with 50,000 palm trees and 300 wells. What do you want here today? The desert asked him. Didn't you spend enough time looking at me yesterday? Somewhere you are holding the person I love, the boy said. So, when I look out over your sands, I am also looking at her. I want to return to her, and I need your help so that I can turn myself into the wind. What is love? The desert asked. Love is the falcon's flight over your sands, because for him you are a green field from which he always returns with game. He knows your rocks, your dunes, and your mountains, and you are generous to him. The falcon's beak carries bites of me. The falcon's beak carries bits of me, myself, the desert said. For years I care for his game, feeding it with the little water that I have, and then I show him where the game is. And one day, as I enjoy the fact that his game thrives on my surface, the falcon dives out of the sky and takes away what I've created. But that's why you created the game in the first place, the boy answered, to nourish the falcon, and the falcon then nourishes man, and eventually man will nourish your sands, where the game will once again flourish. That's how the world goes. So is that what love is? Yes, that's what love is. It's what makes the game become the falcon become man, and man, in his turn, becomes the desert. It's what turns lead into gold and makes the gold return to the earth. I don't understand what you are talking about, but you can at least understand that somewhere in your sands there is a woman waiting for me. And that's why I have to turn myself into the wind. The desert didn't answer him for a few moments. Then it, then it told him, I'll give you my sons to help the wind to blow, but alone I can't do anything. You have to ask for help from the wind. A breeze began to blow. The tribesmen watched the boy from a distance, talking among themselves in a language that the boy didn't understand. The alchemist smiled. The wind approached the boy and touched his face. It knew of the boy's talk with the desert because the winds knew everything. They blow across the world without a birthplace and with no place to die. Help me, the boy said. One day you carry the voice of my loved one to me. Who taught you to speak the language of the desert and the wind? My heart, the boy answered. The wind has many names. In that part of the world, it was called the Sirocco because it brought moisture from the oceans to the east. In the distant land the boy came from, they called it the Levanta because they believed that it brought what is the sand of the deserts and the screams of the Moorish. Kizzy! Kizzy, what's up, sis? It's been a hot minute. What's going on? How you doing? Good to see you this morning as I'm reading The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. How are you doing, my darling sister? Let us continue. Perhaps in the places beyond the pastures where the sheep live, men thought that the wind came from Andalusia, but actually the wind came from no place at all, nor did it go to any place. That's why it was stronger than the desert. Someone might one day plant trees in the desert and even raise sheep there, but never would they harness the wind. Oh, you did it on the job? Okay. Wonderful. Fridays are good days to be on the job. We just come off the job. You can't be the wind said. We're two very different things. That's not true, the boy said. I learned the alchemist's secrets in my travels. I have inside me the winds, the deserts, the oceans, the stars, and everything created in the universe. We were all made by the same hand, and we have the same soul. I want to be like you, able to reach every corner of the world, cross the seas, blow away the sands that cover my treasure, and carry the voice of the woman I love. I heard what you were talking about the other day with the alchemist, the wind said. He said that everything has its own destiny, but people can't turn themselves into the wind. Just teach me to be the wind for a few moments, said the boy, so you and I can talk about the limitless possibilities of people and the winds. The wind's curiosity was aroused, something that had never happened before. It wanted to talk about other things, but it didn't know how to turn a man into the wind. And look how many things the wind already knew how to do. It created deserts, sank ships, felled entire forests, and blew through cities filled with music and strange noises. It felt that it had no limits. Yet, here was a boy saying that there was only things the wind should be able to do. This is what we call love, the boy said, seeing that the wind was close to granting what he requested. When you are loved, you can do anything in creation. When you are loved, there's no need at all to understand what's happening because everything happens within you, and even men can turn themselves into the wind, as long as the wind helps, of course. The wind was a proud being, and it was becoming irritated with what the boy was saying. It commenced to blow harder, raising the desert sands. But finally, it had to recognize that even making its way around the world, it didn't know how to turn a man into the wind. And it knew nothing about love. In my travels around the world, I've often seen people speaking of love and looking towards the heavens, the wind said, furious at having to acknowledge its own limitations. Maybe it's better to ask heaven. Well then, help me do that, the boy said. Fill this place with a sandstorm so strong that it blots out the sun. Then I can look to heaven without blinding myself. So the wind blew with all its strength, and the sky was filled with sand. The boy was turned into a golden disk. At the camp, it was difficult to see anything. The men of the desert were already familiar with this wind. They called it the simum, and it was worse than a storm at sea. Their horses cried out, and all their weapons were filled with sand. On the heights, one of the commanders turned to the chief and said, "Maybe we had better end this." They could barely see the boy. Their faces were covered with the blue cloths, and their eyes showed fear. "Let's stop this," another commander said. "I want to see the greatness of Allah," the chief said with respect. "I want to see how a man turns himself into the wind." But he made a mental note of the names of the two men who had expressed their fears. As soon as the wind stopped, he was going to remove them from their command, because true men of the desert are never afraid. "The wind told me that you know about love," the boy said to the sun. "If you know about love, you must also know about the soul of the world, because it's made of love." "From where I am," the sun said, "I can see the soul of the world. It communicates with my soul, and together we cause the plants to grow and the sheep to seek out shade. From where I am, and I'm a long way from the earth, I learned how to love. I know that if I came even a little bit closer to the earth, everything there would die, and the soul of the world would no longer exist. So we contemplate each other, and we want each other, and I give it life and warmth, and it gives me my reason for living." "So you know about love," the boy said, "and I know the soul of the world, because we have talked at great length to each other during this endless trip through the universe. It tells me that its greatest problem is that, up until now, only the minerals and vegetables understand that all things are one, that there's no need for iron to be the same as copper, or copper the same as gold. Each performs its own exact function as a unique being, and everything would be a symphony of peace if the hand that wrote all this had stopped on the fifth day of creation. But there was a sixth day. The sun went up. You are wise, because you observe everything from a distance, the boy said. But you don't know about love. If there hadn't been a sixth day, man would not exist. Copper would always be just copper, and lead just lead. It's true that everything has its destiny, but one day that destiny will be realized. So each thing has to transform itself into something better and to acquire a new destiny until someday the soul of the world becomes one thing only. The sun thought about that and decided to shine more brightly. The wind, which was enjoying the conversation, started to blow with greater force so that the sun would not blind the boy. "This is why alchemy exists," the boy said, "so that everyone will search for his treasure, find it, and then want to be better than he was in his former life. Lead will play its role until the world has no further need for lead, and then lead will have no reason to turn itself into gold." That's what alchemists do. They show that when we strive to become better than we are, everything around us becomes better too. "Well, why did you say that I don't know about love?" the sun asked the boy. "Because it's not love to be static like the desert, nor is it love to roam the world like the wind. And it's not love to see everything from a distance like you do. Love is the force that transforms and improves the soul of the world. When I first reached through to it, I thought the soul of the world was perfect. But later, I could see that it was like other aspects of creation and had its own passions and wars. It is we who nourish the soul of the world, and the world we live in will be either better or worse, depending on whether we become better or worse. And that's where the power of love comes in, because when we love, we always strive to become better than we are. So, what do you want of me? The son asked. I want you to help me turn myself into the wind, the boy answered. Nature knows me as the wisest being in creation, the son said, but I don't know how to turn you into the wind. Then, whom should I ask? The son thought for a minute. The wind was listening closely and wanted to tell every corner of the world that the sun's wisdom had its limitations, that it was unable to deal with this boy who spoke the language of the world. Speak to the hand that wrote all, said the sun. The wind screamed with delight and blew harder than ever. The tents were being blown from their ties to the earth, and the animals were being freed from their tethers. On the cliff, the men clutched at each other as they sought to keep from being blown away. The boy turned to the hand that wrote all. As he did so, he sensed that the universe had fallen silent, and he decided not to speak. Danica, how are you doing, sugar? So good to see you. Thank you so much for stopping by, my love, as I read this book, The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. A current of love rushed from his heart, and the boy began to pray. It was a prayer that he had never said before, because it was a prayer without words or pleas. His prayer didn't give thanks for his sheep having found new pastors. It didn't ask that the boy be able to sell more crystal. And it didn't beseech that the woman he had met continue to await his return. In the silence, the boy understood that the desert, the wind, and the sun were also trying to understand the signs written by the hand, and were seeking to follow their paths and to understand what had been written on a single emerald. He saw that omens were scattered throughout the earth and in space, and that there was no reason or significance attached to their appearance. He could see that not the deserts, nor the winds, nor the sun, nor people knew why they had been created, but that the hand had a reason for all of this, and that only the hand could perform miracles or transform the sea into a desert or a man into the wind. Because only the hand understood that it was a larger design that had moved the universe to the point at which 6 days of creation had evolved into a masterpiece. The boy reached through to the soul of the world and saw that it was a part of the soul of God. And he saw that the soul of God was his own soul, and that he, a boy, could perform miracles. The simum blew that day as it had never blown before. For generations thereafter, the Arabs recounted the legend of a boy who had turned himself into the wind, almost destroying a military camp, in defiance of the most powerful chief in the desert. When the simum ceased to blow, everyone looked to the place where the boy had been, but he was no longer there. He was standing next to a sand-covered sentinel on the far side of the camp. The men were terrified at his sorcery, but there were two people who were smiling: the alchemist, because he had found his perfect disciple, and the chief, because that disciple had understood the glory of God. The following day, the general bade the boy and the alchemist farewell, and provided them with an escort party to accompany them as far as they chose. They rode for the entire day. Towards the end of the afternoon, they came upon a Coptic monastery. The alchemist dismounted and told the escorts they could return to camp. From here on, you will be alone, the alchemist said. You are only 3 hours from the pyramids. Joe, good morning, Jojo. How are you doing, my love? So good to see you. Thank you so much for coming, as always. Happy Friday, my love. Thank you, said the boy. You taught me the language of the world. I only invoked what you already knew. The alchemist knocked on the gate of the monastery. The monk dressed in black came to the gates. They spoke for a few minutes in the Coptic tongue, and the alchemist bade the boy enter. I asked him to let me use the kitchen for a while. The alchemist smiled. They went to the kitchen at the back of the monastery. The alchemist lit a fire, and the monk brought him some lead, which the alchemist placed in an iron pan. When the lead had become liquid, the alchemist took from his pouch the strange yellow egg. He scraped from it a silver as thin as hair, wrapped it in wax, and added it to the pan in which the lead had melted. The mixture took on a reddish color, almost the color of blood. The alchemist removed the pan from the fire and set it aside to cool. As he did so, he talked with the monk about the tribal wars. I think they are going to last for a long time, he said to the monk. The monk was irritated. The caravans had been stopped at Giza for some time, waiting for the wars to end. But God's will be done, said the monk. Exactly, answered the alchemist. When the pan had cooled, the monk and the boy looked at it, dazzled. The lead had dried into the shape of the pan, but it was no longer lead, it was now gold. Will I learn to do that someday? The boy asked. This was my destiny, not yours, the alchemist answered. But I wanted to show you that it was possible. They returned to the gates of the monastery. There, the alchemist separated the disc into 4 parts. This is for you, he said, holding one of the parts out to the monk. It's for your generosity to the pilgrims. But this payment goes well beyond my generosity, the monk responded. Don't say that again. Life might be listening and give you less the next time. The alchemist turned to the boy. This is for you, to make up for what you gave to the general. The boy was about to say that it was much more than he had given to the general, but he kept quiet because he had heard what the alchemist had said to the monk. And this is for you. And this is for me, said the alchemist, keeping one of the parts, because I have to return to the desert where there are tribal wars. Carl, what's up? How are you doing? Welcome, welcome, welcome. You are very welcome, Jojo. You are welcome, my love. He took the 4th part and handed it to the monk. This is for the boy, if he ever needs it. But I'm going to search for my treasure, the boy said. I'm very close to it now. And I'm certain you'll find it, the alchemist said. Then why this? Because you have already lost your savings twice, once to the thief and once to the general. I'm an old superstitious Arab, and I believe in our proverbs. There's one that says, everything that happens once can never happen again, but everything that happens twice will surely happen a 3rd time. They mounted their horse. I want to tell you a story about dreams, said the alchemist. The boy brought his horse closer. In ancient Rome, at the time of Emperor Tiberius, there lived a good man who had 2 sons. One was in the military and had been sent to the most distant regions of the empire. The other son was a poet and delighted all of Rome with his beautiful verses. One night, the father had a dream. An angel appeared to him and told him that the words of one of his sons would be learned and repeated throughout the world for all generations to come. The father awoke from his dream grateful and crying because life was generous and had revealed to him something any father would be proud to know. Shortly thereafter, the father died as he tried to save a child who was about to be crushed by the wheels of a chariot. Since he had lived his entire life in a manner that was correct and fair, he went directly to heaven, where he met the angel that had appeared to him in his dream. You were always a good man, the angel said to him. You lived your life in a loving way and died with dignity. I can now grant you any wish you desire. Life was good to me, the man said. When you appeared in my dream, I felt that all my efforts had been rewarded because my son's poems will be read by men for generations to come. I don't want anything for myself, but any father would be proud of the fame achieved by one whom he had cared for as a child and educated as he grew up. Sometime in the distant future, I would like to see my son's words. The angel touched the man's shoulder, and they were both projected far into the future. They were in an immense setting, surrounded by thousands of people speaking strange languages. Look like them gone to the Tower of Babel, guys. They are gone to the Tower of Babel, where everybody's speaking all these strange languages. Grant, what's up? How are you doing, my love? Good to see you. Good to see you. Happy Friday to you and everybody else in the chat, all my other travelers who are over here this Friday morning. Welcome, welcome. The man wept with happiness. I know that my son's poems were immortal, he said to the angel through his tears. Can you please tell me which of my son's poems these people are repeating? The angel came closer to the man and, with tenderness, led him to a bench nearby, where they both sat down. The verses of your son, who was the poet, were very popular in Rome, the angel said. Everyone loved them and enjoyed them. But when the reign of Tiberius ended, his poems were forgotten. The words you are hearing now are those of your son in the military. The man looked at the angel in surprise. Your son went to serve at a distant place and became a centurion. He was just and good. One afternoon, one of his servants fell ill, and it appeared that he would die. Your son had heard of a rabbi who was able to cure illnesses, and he rode out for days and days to search for this man. Along the way, he learned that the man he was seeking was the Son of God. He met others who had been cured by him, and they instructed your son in the man's teachings. And so, despite the fact that he was a Roman centurion, he converted to their faith. Shortly thereafter, he reached the place where the man he was looking for was visiting. He told the man that one of his servants was gravely ill, and the rabbi made ready to go to his house with him. But the centurion was a man of faith, and, looking into the eyes of the rabbi, he knew that he was surely in the presence of the Son of God. And this is what your son said, the angel told the man. These are the words he said to the rabbi at that point, and they had never been forgotten. My Lord, I am not worthy that you should come under my roof, but only speak a word, and my servant will be healed. The alchemist said, no matter what he does, every person on earth plays a central role in the history of the world, and normally he doesn't know it. The boy smiled. He had never imagined that questions about life would be of such importance to a shepherd. Goodbye, the alchemist said. Goodbye, said the boy. The boy rode along through the desert for several hours, listening avidly to what his heart had to say. It was his heart that would tell him where the treasure was hidden. Where your treasure is, there also will your heart be, the alchemist had told him. But his heart was speaking of other things. With pride, it told the story of a shepherd who had left his flock to follow a dream he had on 2 different occasions. It told of destiny and of the many men who had wandered in search of distant lands or beautiful women, confronting the people of their times with their preconceived notions. It spoke of journeys, discoveries, books, and change. As he was about to climb yet another dune, his heart whispered, be aware of the place where you are brought to tears. That's where I am, and that's where your treasure is. The boy climbed the dune slowly. A full moon rose again in the starry sky. It had been a month since he had set forth from the oasis. The moonlit cast shadows through the dunes, creating the appearance of a rolling sea. It reminded the boy of the day when that horse had reared in the desert and he had come to know the alchemist. And the moon fell on the desert silence and on a man's journey in search of treasure. When he reached the top of the dune, his heart leapt. There, illuminated in the light of the moon and the brightest of the desert, stood the solemn and majestic pyramids of Egypt. The boy fell to his knees and wept. He thanked God for making him believe in his destiny and for leading him to meet a king, a merchant, an Englishman, and an alchemist. And above all, for his having met a woman of the desert who had told him that love would never keep a man from his destiny. If he wanted to, he could now return to the oasis, go back to Fatima, and live his life as a simple shepherd. After all, the alchemist continued to live in the desert, even though he understood the language of the world and knew how to transform lead into gold. He didn't need to demonstrate his science and art to anyone. The boy told himself that, on the way towards realizing his own destiny, he had learned all he needed to know and had experienced everything he might have dreamed of. But there he was, at the point of finding his treasure, and he reminded himself that no project is completed until his objective had been achieved. The boy looked at the sands around him and saw that, where his tears had fallen, the scarab beetle was cuttling through the sand. During this time in the desert, he had learned that in Egypt, the scarab beetles are a symbol of God. Another omen. The boy began to dig into the dune. As he did so, he thought of what the crystal merchant had said once, that anyone could build a pyramid in his backyard. The boy could see now that he could do so if he placed stone upon stone for the rest of his life. Throughout the night, the boy dug at the place he had chosen, but found nothing. He felt weighed down by the centuries of time since the pyramids had been built, but he didn't stop. He struggled to continue digging as he fought the wind, which often blew the sand back into the excavation. His hands were abraded and exhausted, but he listened to his heart. It had told him to dig where his tears fell. Hey everybody, hope everybody's having a great day. Morning guys, Lori is here. Welcome guys. Guys, don't forget to hit that like button. This book is a great book. I enjoy reading it. And trust me, I'm going to read this book again. And I'm going to read this book again. Yep, we're going to read this book again. Because those who don't understand will understand on the second reading. And maybe the third. As he was attempting to pull out the rocks he encountered, he heard footsteps. Several figures approached him. Their backs were to the moonlight, and the boy could see neither their faces nor their eyes. "What are you doing here?" one of the figures demanded. Because he was terrified, the boy didn't answer. He had found where his treasure was and was frightened at what might happen. "We are refugees from the tribal wars, and we need money," the other figure said. "What are you hiding there?" "I am not hiding anything," the boy answered, but one of them seized the boy and yanked him back out of the hole. Another, who was searching the boy's bags, found a piece of gold. "There's gold here," he said. The moon shone on the face of the Arab who had seized him, and in the man's eyes the boy saw death. He's probably got more gold hidden in the ground." They made the boy continue digging, but he found nothing. As the sun rose, the men began to beat the boy. He was bruised and bleeding. His clothing was torn to shreds, and he felt that death was near. "What good is money to you if you're going to die? It's not often that money can save someone's life," the alchemist had said. Finally, the boy screamed at the men, "I'm digging for treasure!" And, although his mouth was bleeding and swollen, he told his attackers that he had twice dreamed of a treasure hidden near the pyramids of Egypt. The man who appeared to be the leader of the group spoke to one of the others. "Leave him. He doesn't have anything. He must have stolen this gold." The boy fell to the sand, nearly unconscious. The leader shook him and said, "We're leaving." But before they left, he came back to the boy and said, "You are not going to die. You will live, and you will learn that a man shouldn't be so stupid. 2 years ago, right here on this very spot, I had a recurrent dream too. I dreamed that I should travel to the fields of Spain and look for a ruined church where shepherds and their sheep slept. In my dream, there was a sycamore growing out of the ruins of the sacristy, and I was told that if I dug at the roots of the sycamore, I could find a hidden treasure. But I'm not so stupid as to cross an entire desert just because of a recurrent dream." And they disappeared. The boy stood up shakily and looked once more at the pyramids. They seemed to laugh at him, and he laughed back, his heart bursting with joy, because now he knew where his treasure was. "Mikey, what's up? How are you doing, my love?" God says sometimes the things we are looking for to elevate in life are already in our hands. Exactly. Exactly. Sometimes the things that we are hell-bent on finding somewhere else, we already have it right at our fingertips. It's like believing the grass is greener on the other side when all you have to do is water the grass where you're at. And voila, you'll have green grass. Wow. Guys, that is the end of the book, you know. That is the end of the book, The Alchemist, written by Paulo Coelho. What's left of it right now is the epilogue. All right, so I'm going to read the epilogue for us. This is a very, very interesting book, filled with lots of literary treasure, so to speak, and a lot of life's treasures as well. If you can get your hand on one of these books, guys, you need to take a read. It's a very, very good book. I'm going to read the epilogue for us. The boy reached the small abandoned church just as night was falling. The sycamore was still there in the sacristy, and the stars could still be seen through the half destroyed roof. He remembered the time he had been there with his sheep. It had been a peaceful night, except for the dream. Now he was here not with his flock, but with a shovel. So he had left from that same church. It was that same church where he used to sleep with his sheep. And he dreamt about the treasures being in Egypt by the pyramids. So he traveled all the way to Egypt by the pyramid, only to be told that the treasure is probably at the church where he had the dream. So now he's back at the church. Sometimes we run up and down like a chicken without a head, trying to find something that we don't have, instead of just relaxing, taking a minute to look around, see what we already have, and use it. Instead, we are going miles and miles and miles looking for treasures that we already possess. Ain't that something, guys? The boy reached the small abandoned church just as night was falling. The sycamore was still there in the sacristy, and the stars could still be seen through a half-destroyed roof. He remembered the time he had been there with his sheep. It had been a peaceful night, except for the dream. Now he was here not with his flock, but with a shovel. He sat looking at the sky for a long time. Then he took from his knapsack a bottle of wine and drank some. He remembered the night in the desert when he had sat with the alchemist as they looked at the stars and drank wine together. He thought of the many roads he had traveled and of the strange way God had chosen to show him his treasure. If he hadn't believed in the significance of recurrent dreams, he would not have met the gypsy woman, the king, the thief, or, well, it's a long list. But the path was written in the omen, and there was no way I could go wrong, he said to himself. He fell asleep, and when he awoke, the sun was already high. He began to dig at the base of the sycamore. "You old sorcerer!" the boy shouted up to the sky. "You know the whole story. You even left a bit of gold at the monastery so I could get back to this church." The monk laughed when he saw me come back in tatters. "Couldn't you have saved me from that?" "No," he heard a voice on the wind say. "If I had told you, you wouldn't have seen the pyramids. They are beautiful, aren't they?" The boy smiled and continued digging. Half an hour later, his shovel hit something solid. An hour later, he had before him a chest of Spanish gold coins. There were also precious stones, gold masks adorned with red and white feathers, and stone statues embedded with jewels. The spoils of the conquest and the country had long ago forgotten, and that some conquistador had failed to tell his children about. The boy took out Urim and Thummim. Oh, I thought he had gotten rid of Urim and Thummim, but he still had them. The boy took out Urim and Thummim from his bag. He had used the two stones only once. One morning when he was at the marketplace, his life and his path had always provided him with enough omens. He placed Urim and Thummim in the chest. They were also a part of his new treasure because they were a reminder of the old king, whom he would never see again. It's true, life really is generous to those who pursue their destiny, the boy thought. Then he remembered that he had to get to Tarifa so he could give 1/5 of his treasure to the gypsy woman, as he had promised. Those gypsies are really smart, he thought. Maybe it was because they moved around so much. The wind again began to blow. It was the lavender, the wind that came from Africa. It didn't bring with it the smell of the desert, nor the threat of Moorish invasion. Instead, it brought the scent of the perfume he knew well, and the touch of a kiss that came from far, far away, slowly, slowly, until it rested on his lips. The boy smiled. It was the first time he had done that. "I'm coming, Fatima," he said. "I am coming." And that is the end of the book, The Alchemist, written by Paulo Coelho. Guys, it was an absolute pleasure for me reading this book for us. I hope you all enjoyed the reading as much as I enjoyed bringing it to you. That's where the book ends, and I hope you all have found a lot of life lessons. For those of you who are here yesterday, one of the lessons in yesterday's reading, it talked about the horse and the camel being a traitorous, means a traitor. The camel is a traitor because you could have that camel working and it would work and work and work and work for you non-stop, never seeming to get tired. And then one day it will just kneel down and die unexpectedly. But the horse, on the other hand, the horse would work, and then when he was tired, he would rest, work some more, rest, work and rest. That means you could get more out of a horse than you could out of a camel. And that's where we are going to end the reading for today. We are going to come back later on the live. Later we will come back and just have a Friday vibing. But for right now, guys, that's where the reading is going to be finished for today. Thank you all so much for coming in. I see my sister Lori and Winsome and Mikey Laugh and Card and Joseph and Who else was here? Kizzy and Grant was here as well. Lanika and VH and AG and several others. I want to say a very special thank you to everybody who came into the reading of The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. Thank you all so much for coming in, guys. And that's going to be it from me for today. Until next time, this is Trev from Trevessence, where your journey matters. You have yourselves a great day, guys. Until we come back at around 1 o'clock. All right, have yourselves a great day, guys. See you all later.